It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, where we're reacting to the breaking news of the NFL trade deadline, and nowhere has it been busier than here in D.C. Chase Young traded. Montez Sweat traded. Sweat to the Bears for a second rounder. Chase Young to the 49ers for a late third, the compensatory pick that the 49ers got for hiring Ron Carthon, the former Titans executive, into their front office. So that'll be a late one. The Bears, probably a very early second-round pick. And we're going to take your calls on it as the show goes, 301-230-0980, because this is a Vibe Check Tuesday, and I'm sure the vibes are all over the place. But I want to start off with kind of a harder analysis, less of a vibe check, more of what you guys would expect from me on such a monumental day with this trade happening. Today marks the Josh Harris restart of the franchise. And according to The Athletic's Diana Rossini, ownership was involved in at least some form or fashion here. I'm sure as the reporting is flushed out, we'll hear a little bit more of just how involved, but there was certainly encouragement to make trades that were better for the long term of this team. And, you know, I don't want to use the words fortunately or unfortunately because that depends on your perspective, but realistically, they thought that this was, the football people, the ownership to the extent that they're involved in this, thought that these deals would help move that along. I think they are correct. And that is not because Chase Young and Montez Sweat are not excellent individual football players. It's not because this team hasn't had success with both of them on the field. They did, you know, kind of figure it out late in 2020 defensively and obviously rode that and a horrendous rest of the NFC and specifically NFC East to a playoff spot that 7-9 season under Rivera in his first year. But since then, they have not been very good with both of them on the field. And the reality of the situation is this. This team was supposed to be a defensive first, potentially top, certainly top 10, potentially top 5 unit. And they are currently 28th out of 32 teams in defensive DVOA. They are 31st in yards against, and they are 31st in scoring. So no matter how good you think Chase Young or Montez Sweat is, clearly this team is not good enough with them to justify continuing forward along this path. They are the two that pay the price as having contracts coming up as the easiest guys to deal. There's no dead cap money as you would take on in a Payne or Allen deal. And so if you're going to, and by the way, you're going to have to pay them. And so by the way, like if you're going to make a move, these are the guys that are going to get moved based off this current timeline. I'd also argue they're the two best guys to get moved because they're third and fourth best players on this line. I think the level Daron Payne has played at the last 2 years, he's been the best player on the team, or on the defensive line. I think John Allen has been very good. I think Sweat has been very good. I think Chase Young has looked phenomenal in stretches, although he's also looked fairly pedestrian. And realistically, as let me hone in on Chase, and then I'll talk more about Montez. Chase Young is uber talented, but his effort level in games is at times extremely poor. And if you're trying to set a culture for the future, you have to evaluate that and decide, is it important to you to have the talent or to have the guys that go out there and bust their butts? And you see a difference in how this defense plays with Casey Tuhill, James Smith-Williams, and F.A. Obata in that spot when there's just effort there. And sure, on individual plays, when Chase's talent wins, what more could you possibly want? And I've been singing Chase's praises much of the last few weeks because he has played really well in spots. But you start to watch the tape a little closer. You start to watch what happens when he doesn't immediately win. You watch him in the run game, and it's not NFL quality. It's not NFL effort. And he's young. He may still learn to give that. He may now be in a situation in San Francisco where he feels more pressure to do that because he'll have an example in Nick Bosa, who doesn't really care about Chase Young, his feelings, or anything else. He's just going to go out and play hard. And a coaching staff in San Francisco that doesn't tolerate the things that get tolerated here. And so this is not a full indictment of Chase. This is in part an indictment of the organization. There's also a geography situation here. How much of this is influenced by the fact that Chase is closer to home? And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. And I don't know that it's been a great thing for Chase here. You hear all these different things and rumblings and rumors, and you don't know what to believe. But the stuff that we know is there's been miscommunication between him and the staff, him and the organization over injuries, over when he's going to play, over when he's not, how certain things are progressing. It has been a tumultuous relationship. And at some point, it's better for all parties to move on. And what you see, league-wide here, is the league doesn't know what to make of it. There is no world talent-wise, for as great as Montez Sweat is, that he should be getting a higher return when they are both in contract years than Chase Young. But the league tells you your value. And I don't think the Commanders traded with the 49ers for funsies. They did it because that was the best offer on the table. Probably a lot of fourth-rounders. The Niners were like, well, shoot, we have this extra compensatory third. Let's do that. And the Commanders looking around and just go, I guess that's the deal. And so it was. And so I understand the frustration today of not getting more for Chase, even if you like the idea of trading Chase, for not getting more for him. You'll blame Ron Rivera. It's organizational malpractice. How could let another GM do this? You can't. You don't have the long-term say over this. All you can do is deal with the right now. You could wait, but there's no guarantee that the pick is going to get any better. I mean, I guess I think the argument for keeping Chase would have been this, and I don't think this is unreasonable. You let him play out the final 9 games. You hope that it gets better. You franchise him, and then you trade him. But then what do you do with Cam Curl? Now your path forward is very simple. You have one guy you need to take care of in a big money way. That is Cam Curl. So if you don't get a deal done with him fairly early in the offseason, and when I say you, I mean the Commanders, and I mean probably someone who's not Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew or Marty Hurney or any of the people that are in those jobs right now. Realistically, if we're being adults about this, there's going to be new people making the decisions. So those people now have the bargaining power to go to Cam Curl and say, this is the deal. If you like it, you can sign. We can also negotiate a little bit if you want a little more here, a little less here, a little whatever, whether that's years, bonus money, salary, however they want to structure it, they can have that conversation. And if not, you franchise him. And whether you then keep him or you trade Cam Curl as well is a decision that is to be made by the next people. What you don't have to worry about is who do we sign, who do we franchise, who do we risk letting get to the market, who do we just lose? And the thing is, for everyone that's like, oh, you're getting a compensatory pick anyway, not necessarily. This is a team with a ton of cap space. And if you lose, let's say Montez Sweat, he goes signs a big deal somewhere else, you get a compensatory third rounder if you don't sign another big-time free agent. So if you go out and you sign a big-time free agent, you don't get anything. So you get what you can now, and you move forward with the understanding that a rebuild is on. To an extent. I think it can be a Philadelphia Eagles-style pretty fast rebuild. And I think the draft capital today is really important in that. Because you have now choices. And you have choices in a draft that is loaded. And it's loaded specifically with quarterbacks, which could be a relevant piece of information for you directly if this season goes sideways for the final 9 games of Sam Howell. And if you decide that is not the direction you want to go, okay. Or if you decide that there's... Sam was good, but maybe we trade him, kind of like the Cardinals did with what's his face, Josh Rosen a couple years ago, because he was good, or he was good enough as a rookie to show a little bit of promise, although he wasn't very good. Sam's been better than Josh Rosen was, but they got a second or third for him a year later, which in Sam's case, from a fifth, if you can get a third in return, sweet. But then can you use that to trade up and get the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth pick? But even if you don't, and you're like, sweet, we actually have a guy in Howell, we don't need to spend money at quarterback or a high draft pick. If there's 4 quarterbacks that are awesome in this draft, what does that do to the rest of the draft? It pushes everybody down. So let's say there's a Hall of Fame left tackle available that normally would go second. That guy might go 6th. And if you're the Commanders and you're going to wind up picking 15th, And you can all of a sudden trade the 15th pick, the 35th pick that you just got from the Bears for Montez, and your own second up for the building block left tackle for the next decade. Is that better? And that, by the way, that guy now costs you rookie salary for the next 5 years. Or maybe it's even an edge rusher. Maybe there's a literal direct replacement that costs you a fraction of what Montez Sweat will cost you, and maybe is 90% of the player as a rookie because he's literally the best pass rusher in the draft. And his upside is 120% of Montez Sweat. That's on the table for you now. It was not when I woke up this morning. And so I understand that people are thinking directly like, oh, this trade got this for that guy. Eyes on your own paper. The Commanders' future got better today. And if your biggest gripe is that the Commanders have stunk at second-round picks, one, I hear you. Two, that's a silly gripe. Because I just texted with a buddy of mine who's a big Commanders fan. There is no strategy that is management-proof. Just like there is no play that is execution-proof. There is no team-building strategy that is management-proof. If they don't hire the right coach and they don't hire the right GM, none of this matters, but it would have never mattered. Keeping Chase and Montez would not have mattered. What you've done now, if you're Josh Harris, and to whatever extent he put his thumb on the scales, is set your next regime up with a lot of capital to make big, bold moves, or stay put and get a lot of good young players that should fit the culture of whatever the next coach wants to be. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980, and we're taking your calls next at 301-230-0980 on the Ace Law listener line.
Hey, it's Logan Paul.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 on the weirdest Vibe Check Tuesday we're ever going to have, Anthony. This is a different one for sure with the trade deadline coming and going. There were one or two last-minute deals. The big one was the Bills acquiring cornerback Rasul Douglas from the Packers. That was a third and a fifth in return. But the biggest trades of the day both involved the Commanders. That is Chase Young to San Francisco, Montez Sweat to Chicago. So let's talk about it with you on the Ace Law listener line. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888-ACE-LAW, 301-230-0980. Let's start off with Steve. Steve, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hello?
Hey, Steve. This is the part where you're on the radio.
Oh, can you hear me?
All right, that's enough from Steve. Let's go to Lap. Lap, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Craig? Hey, man, I like the moves. I know a lot of people are upset, but Chase going to be going up against Trent in practice every day, man. It's going to bring that dog out of him, man. You know, Nick Bosa credits Trent Williams a lot, you know, for their intense practices together. So I think that's going to make him better. He's on a contender, and it's going to be exciting to see. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see it here, but only flashes. But I like the picks we got. I wish we could have got some corners or offensive line out the deal, but it's cool. And just going forward, man, just see what they made of. You know, these last 9 games, you can see the development of Sam. We still have a legitimate chance to make the playoffs, you know, but it's on us, man. And it's just to see how we're going to come out, you know what I'm saying? So I'm excited about it, and we get ready for the new head coach that's going to be coming up here soon, and we go from there, man. But I like it. I like it. I know some fans wanted more picks, but, I mean, I'll take it.
Yeah, Lap, thanks for the call, man. I mean, the thing is, NFL player-for-player trades barely ever happen. So the idea that you're going to get a corner, you're going to get an O-lineman, you're going to get anybody like that, like, this is just not realistic in terms of what you see in this league happen. And in terms of more picks, too, like, I think people need to understand the way the value works in the league. Like, you're talking about guys that have 9 games left on their contracts that are going to be very expensive to retain. If that is the case, then, like, you're like, a second-round pick is a lot for a guy of that. Like, I'm pretty surprised they got a second-round pick for Montez Sweat. Like, just to be totally honest and transparent with you guys, like, I'm stunned. And so if I'm stunned, like, you can be mad all you want, but I mean, I don't really know where that ends. It's just like, this is how value in the league works. If you got a guy who's like, Leonard Williams got more because he was under contract. He's under team control longer. There's only so much you get for expiring deals. All right, let's go to Mark in Largo, who's got a point that I think is interesting to respond to. Mark, go ahead. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Craig, before I make this point, I want to say something. I'm not attacking you personally. I happen to like you. Okay. I think when you do everything by the book. But I have to say this. I really do. I think the media in this town has gotten too powerful when it comes to the football team.
Okay.
And let me explain what I'm trying to say here.
Okay.
In the last 4 years, everything has pretty much, when the media's gone south on players, instead of letting them grow up, instead of letting them mature, instead of letting things happen, when they've gone south on players, let's get rid of them, let's do this, let's do that, y'all start fanting the flames, and we've seen this too much. We've seen one kid pass away, and I think because of the mental damage that happened in this town from here, and now Chase, who probably wanted to get the hell away from here because of what happened to his friend. And then you have Montez Sweat. Of course, look, Dan's not leaving. I get it. What I'm trying to say is this. We got to let these kids grow up. We got to let these kids make mistakes. We got to let these kids become players and everything else. All right? You don't give up 2 defensive ends. 1, I understand, but not 2. I mean, I just think asinine to do that.
So
this was a reaction because of what happened on Sunday.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Mark, here, let me respond to your point real quick, because I think it's a good one, and I think it's worth exploring. And I also appreciate, I'm trying not to take it personal, and that you differentiating the way I intentionally.
I'm not attacking you.
Yeah.
I'm not attacking you.
I appreciate that.
This is not about you.
Yeah, because I am definitely someone who has said
Chris
at times.
Russell is a different story.
Well, I'm not going to call names of colleagues. Russell occasionally gets out over his skis.
I get
it. You know what? I've called Chris on it. So, like, if you want to name Chris, fine. Like, sure, at times. But I think it is, what you're saying is important. But what I would tell you is much of media is simply a reflection of the fan base. And this is where I get in trouble sometimes, is I say things that is not a reflection of the fan base, and then y'all want to kill me whether I'm right or not. Like, that was me. Like, to be honest, Mark, like, that was me last week. I'm not trying to make this about me. I'm just trying to, actually illustrate your point here. Last week, I said something that wasn't, give me EB's head on a platter because the game plan sucked and the offensive line was bad. And even though I actually said that and I said the O-line was bad, I said it in a different order and I put Sam first, and everyone was coming for my neck all week. And so what it actually is a reflection of the fans. And I would tell you, like, in some ways it's great, the intensity of the fan base, but it's also this. So I'm not going to actually disagree with you, Mark. I'm just going to say fans and media need to remember that these are human beings. And when we're talking about athletes, specifically very young human beings.
And this is why I think the fan base, and me personally, because I'm a huge fan of Sam Howell, are so protective of Sam Howell. Because I think everyone feels that quarterbacks in this town do not get a fair shake. Whether it's Robert Griffin III, what he was doing, we don't know what he was doing off the field. Some people do, some people don't. Look, I'm not going to get into what he was doing off the field. That's it. Kirk Cousins, it was a mixed reaction. And I think because Kirk came in after Robert, he was like the rebound girl. That's why a lot of people never really took to him.
100%.
Dwayne Haskins, he was never given the fit. I get it. But all I'm saying, and that's why I think a lot of people are so overprotective of Sam. And this is why I say, and they were like this with Taylor, because they want to see people get a chance, whereas, not everybody in the media is like, I'm not on this guy, and they say certain things and stuff. I see where you're coming from, Craig, and I understand that. I just think this team is going to turn around. I think they have no choice, and I think they're going to turn around. And if they make the playoffs, oh my God.
Well, I mean, if they make Mark, we're going to let you go. I think you bring up a really good point, and, I appreciate your call because it comes from a really human place. I do think there's like a line here where you have to be able to provide analysis and criticism and do it within a scope and a context that is like, hey, I'm criticizing this person's performance in one game. And like, that was the thing that killed me last week, where I was just like, and we'll talk about this more and never read the comments tomorrow, but like some of the comments I got were ridiculous. Sam wasn't good against New York. What do you want me to say? Like, it doesn't mean that I gave up on him. And so, like, all of a sudden I'm saying great things about him this weekend because he was awesome. And people are like, oh, I thought you hated Sam. I thought you flip-flopped. And I'm like, no, you just don't listen. Like, you don't, like, you're telling on yourself and your listening comprehension or your reading comprehension if you're reading something, because you take a criticism of a play, a game, a quarter, a series, and make that into someone's entire opinion. When it's like, no, like that was a bad decision. That was a bad throw. Here's 5 others that were good or mediocre or whatever. And we have to be able to, as adults, like have those conversations. Like we're talking about sports. Like one of the things that I find fascinating, especially in this town, is we can joke about politics all day, which actually matter. Now, some people can't. Some people just want to get in fights. I saw Anthony's ears just perk up. He's like, oh God, he said the P word. But like, one thing that like comedians will talk about this, they would much rather make jokes about politics because the politicians and the people involved are like, yeah, this is part of the deal. And then with sports of like, you don't say the right thing when there's actually nothing on the line because it's sports, where politics, like the policies that politicians have, impact all of our lives all of the time, whether you realize it or not. In sports, it's like, get him! And it's like, what are we doing? So, that got a little sidetracked and a little macro for kind of where I want most of the rest of the hour to go, but it's not a bad call, and I'm happy to talk about it. But the point, like the larger point, or the smaller point, I guess, with these guys is I think that they have proven as football players that this team can move forward without them and be just fine because we've seen the results. And I was someone who this summer was like, I want to see this play out. I like this. Like, I think there's a situation where they franchise one of these guys and sign the other and, like, see where you are a year from now and see, can you be thoroughly dominant? But we've had a sample size big enough to go, the answer is no. You can't forget being thoroughly dominant. You can't be above average. And so that's why they make the moves today. I agree with you as well, Mark, by the way, that one, I would have much rather traded just one of them. And frankly, I would have traded Chase. But the return on Montez is so high, a second rounder from the Bears that could be a top 35 pick. Like, that kind of becomes a no-brainer at that point. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Programming notes. We now have confirmed guests for the rest of the show. John Keim joins us at 5 p.m. Yep, set an alert. John Keim, 5 p.m. And then I was talking to start the show about how there's a trickle down for the draft here. So just how deep is this draft? Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema joins us at 5:30 to discuss. Linnell for Overreaction Tuesday. We'll throw in the 6 o'clock hour. And then we got your calls pretty much the rest of the show. So that's how we shake it out. 301-230-0980. We'll move a little faster through the rest of the calls for the rest of the hour next.
The Commanders, NFL Primetime, and the Terrapins. The DMV's home for football is the Team 980.
That's lit, man.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Chase Young, Montez Sweat traded. We're talking about it on a Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show, where we're also streaming live. Audience slightly larger today than usual on YouTube and growing by the second. Happy to have everybody with us. We do this every day, 4 to 7, so make sure that you join us at the Team 980. But taking your calls, 301-230-0980 on the Ace Law listener line. Let's go to Mark in Laurel. Mark, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen. I just wanted to make a couple quick comments. In the NFL today, you have to have the pass rushing position is second, basically second behind the quarterback.
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening from FedEx Field? It's the Instant Reaction Show. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman.
To either Sweat or Chase, but they gave the money to Deron Payne. And again, Deron Payne benefited from a soft schedule. And again, I think his name's only been called one time this year, if I do believe.
All right, that's enough of that. Deron Payne's been the best defensive lineman they've had all year. And I'm not at a point where we have too many calls to entertain things that are not true. Look, if you want to say that you need the edges instead of the interior guys, like, fine, but with those interior guys playing well, they've been a very, very highly rated unit. And when one of the edge guys goes missing, they've actually been just fine. With the James Smith-Williams and Casey Tuhills and F.A. Obadas. We'll get to see what K.J. Henry has now as a fifth-round pick who's been inactive the whole year. Andre Jones Jr. is going to probably play a little bit more on third downs, especially, I would imagine. And, like, you've got young guys that you want to figure out what they are. Yes, you need pass rushers, but the guy who's gotten the biggest pass rush numbers consistently over the last couple of years has been John Allen, who's been like 8+ a year, and Deron Payne had 11 last year. Montez Sweat has never had double-digit sacks. Like, it's just not true. And I'm sorry, Deron Payne has been the best football player on that defense for a year and a half running. I think he's been better than John. John has been very close. I think John's, if we're doing a composite score, like the first 6 games of John Allen this year are a wounded John Allen. He's either still suffering from the plantar fascia issue directly, like his foot was not right, or he just wasn't quite back in shape from having missed nearly 2 weeks of camp, almost 3 weeks of camp. So, no. I do agree that it's bad process. They drafted Payne's replacement and then signed him, and that was silly. But like, that's already been done. It's a sunk cost. You have to move forward now and not repeat the same mistakes again. Let's go to Reggie. Reggie, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
I got you, loud and clear.
Yeah. So 2 things, right? When considering a draft, there's 2 things you have to consider, and one is timing, and the other one is value. Like, I give them an A on the Montez Sweat trade. He's played 4 full years. We pretty much know what he is, and you got what's going to be a high second-round draft pick for him. You spent the first, so that's a pretty good deal if you want to move on from Montez. But Chase Young, I think that they got poor value for several reasons. One, Chase is coming off of a serious injury. This is his first fully healthy year, all right? And, okay, he's not Nick Bosa, but the man is 11th in the league in pass rush win rate, and he's 5th in the league in pressures. And he's missed a game. So, to say you got a third-round pick and what's going to be a late third-round pick at that, I felt like they pulled the trigger a little too soon. It'll be nice to see how this year plays out for Chase, see if he keeps improving. And at the end of the year, if you're still not sure, you still have the franchise tag in your pocket to give it a little more time. That third-round pick wasn't going anywhere. They could get something for Chase at a later time. So I think they kind of rushed things with the Chase Young trade. And one more thing.
Yeah.
especially considering who they traded with. You know, Shanahan in San Francisco, you know, they fleeced us for Trent Williams when, once again, they were in a rush to move an asset without giving it time to play out.
Well,
and this
yeah.
feels a lot like that.
Well, I would tell you it's not, though. The Trent thing, I mean, there are some similarities. Reggie, thanks for the call. I totally agree with you on Sweat. Getting what is, you know, a top 40 for sure, probably top 37, 36, 35 pick is a good value for a guy who's 27 years old, owed a giant contract, and has never had a double-digit sack season. He's still going to get paid. I think the difference is with Chase versus Trent. Like, Chase isn't proven. Trent was. Like, once they got Trent back, he would have returned to being exactly what he is. But I also think that there's something to, like, not necessarily assuming that whatever Chase does in San Francisco is what he would have done here. They're two different environments. They're two different cultures. They're two different atmospheres. And that is not an indictment of Chase. That is it's a little bit of an indictment of Chase. You'd hope that if he was self-motivated in the way that the greatest of the greats are, it wouldn't matter where you are. But realistically, it does. And for him, it absolutely does. But it is an indictment of the organization. But pushing that until the offseason, I don't know about that. Because, like, I'm going to hit you with the Brian Windhorst meme here. Now, why would they do that? Or, Anthony, I should really go full Windhorst, get the two finger guns. Now, why would they do that? It's addition by subtraction. And I hate to say that because I think Chase Young has shown some really, really special stuff. But let's review the last couple of weeks for Chase Young. Good luck trying to find super elite effort on a run play on tape. It's just not there. And I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't go out and play. All I do is watch. Like, I can't make him go do stuff. I'm not making stuff up. I don't feel good saying this because I like praising people more than I do pointing out their flaws. But the dude, he doesn't give premium effort. He's talented enough that he's going to put up pretty premium numbers. And so he's going to get paid a boatload of money because someone's going to think that they can get the best out of him. But down in, down out, he's not an elite player. And there's more to that position than sacks. And what happened against Philadelphia is the second that his initial move didn't work against Jordan Mailata, he kind of just gave up. Like, that is not who they drafted. The reason Chase was such a prospect is not just because of the physical freakiness and the twitchiness and the length and the size and the strength and the power. It's because his motor at Ohio State was ridiculous. He hasn't shown that here. And so you then go to his comments, his own words, where he talks about, I got to be a better leader at practice. I got to be a better, I got to set a better example. And it's like, what are you waiting for? So why would they do this? The answer is because they think, and it's impossible. I hate doing this because it's not very fun. And I don't mean to shut down, a fan opinion of someone who isn't inside the building or my own opinion. I'm not inside the building. But, like, they know more than we do because they deal with him every day. And the only plausible explanation is that it's addition by subtraction. They think to move forward as a franchise, as an organization, that they are better off without him. And I understand that's probably going to solicit some calls that just makes everyone go, well, then Ron Rivera is a moron, or whatever you want to say about Ron. And maybe there's shreds of truth to his decision-making. For sure there is over the years. But the kind of quiet part out loud is, it is very clear if they traded Chase for this, to me, and we'll ask Keim about this at the top of the hour, that they think that there is an addition by subtraction element here. And thus it is worth it. And by the way, the fact that this was definitely the best offer they had, because why would they take a worse one, tells you that the league knew and to some extent agrees that the risk-reward ratio for Chase Young was not there for someone to give up a second or a first or whatever, especially when you could be looking at him for only 9 games and then he goes to free agency. 301-230-0980, the Ace Law listener line. We'll wrap up with your calls next before Keim joins us at 5 p.m. here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The Ace Law listener line is 301-230-0980. If you're in a wreck, Ace Law helps you get a check. Call 8888 Ace Law. All right, let's go to Rob. Rob, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, while I was sitting there listening to you, I came up with another possibility why they traded Chase Young. Supposing he catches an attitude for trading Sweat and just basically gives up and free agent, you lose, you get nothing for the effort.
I mean, sure, but all right, Rob, thanks for the call. I mean, a lack of professionalism, sure. Let's go to Lucas in Maryland. Let's go to Lucas. Thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show. Let's not. There we go. All right, Lucas, we got your phone working now. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call. Actually, I was trying to jump in early. You made my point that I was going to try to make already. So I agree with everything you're saying. I love the trades. They're trying to change a culture there. They're trying to do a different culture. And I think more so, if you talk to NFL players, it's more so than the media than in-house. So what's going to happen is I think this is the best thing for Chase Young also. Nick Bosa is going to take him by the arm and say, hey, this is the way you do things. Okay?
I agree.
And I think maybe next year he might be a stud that he's supposed to be. But that still doesn't mean that the trade's not a good thing for the Commanders because they're starting a new culture. They're doing different things. Okay? They're getting better players in the organization. And the bottom line is that Ron Rivera, he's a good dude. He makes a good transition and stuff like that. And I think this is my question to you is that, and I think the company's doing this, is they're changing over things. I see Eric Bieniemy as their head coach. I think they can make changes. Sam Howell, we don't really know what he is yet. He could be, I mean, if you put him up to like a Daniel Jones and a Tannehill, he's better than those guys.
Sure.
And they're playoff.
So, Lucas, I'm going to cut you off
I mean?
only because I want to try to get to as many of these calls as possible, but I will respond to your thought. So I appreciate the call. I don't necessarily disagree that Eric Bieniemy, if given the head coaching job in January, couldn't have been a better coach this season than Ron Rivera. However, he is currently the offensive coordinator, and his hands are full. And I think the most important question still to be answered this year is exactly what you just said. How good is Sam Howell, and what can he be? Because I think, look, if Sam was like a first-round pick this year, and I realize the contract would be a little different and all that kind of stuff, but generally speaking, like, I think we'd be pretty happy with how the young guy's playing, so to speak. But I don't want to distract EB from that job. And if you make him the head coach and you tell him, hey, dude, you got to go figure out how to fix Benjamin St. Juice, contested catch issue, that takes him away from Sam and takes him away from offensive game planning. It takes him away from quarterback development and from working with these offensive guys to make Sam's job better and easier and more successful, and teaching him about what it takes to win in this league. So I don't necessarily disagree with you, and culturally maybe EB is more in the direction that they want to go, but that doesn't mean you should give him the job now, because that also sours kind of what, good or bad, what could happen with him in the future and like your decision making. I would want to evaluate EB on his own merit. You're seeing what he can do with an offense right now, seeing how he develops Sam. Keep doing that, and I would not make a head coaching change right now. Although I don't think it's the most ridiculous, unexplainable position in the world. Anthony, you want to highlight whoever you think we should go to next on the sheet? Where should we go? Let's go to Jackie. Jackie, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Hoffman, what's good? Long-time listener. I listen to you and Ant all the time.
Appreciate it.
At first, I was a little upset about the trade, but if you think about it from a business aspect, it's not a bad idea because you're going to have a new GM, hopefully, and some new coaches. So why not put them in the best position to draft as many players as they can to start getting us moving in a right direction. I wouldn't get rid of Bieniemy, though, because I feel like he still needs another full year with Sam Howell, because I like Sam Howell, but I'm good with the trade. I was upset at first, but guess what? I'm good with it. Thanks for taking my call. Ant, you be good, baby.
All right. Thank you so much, Jackie. I mean, That's totally true. And we had a caller earlier. I think it was actually another part of Mark's call, and then we got caught up on the first part of it. And he never got to a second point, but it's what Ant had written in the rundown. So I'm going to respond to that now because I think it's, Jackie just kind of touched on it. Some people are going like, well, how's this any different than what Dan used to do? Dan used to like dictate the moves. Dan used to heavily put his thumb on the scale, and he would do it at times that were wholly and totally inappropriate. This is the time for an owner to put his thumb on the scale. Like, I don't think you can just look at like, hey, this is a flawed analogy, but I'm going to make it. It's not a bad thing to cross the street. It's a bad thing to cross the street when there are cars coming. Like, you're still crossing the street. Well, I don't know. Dan crossed the street and Josh crossed the street. They both just crossed the street. What's the difference? Well, Dan did it when there was an army of Mack trucks coming down the highway, and, there were some wrecks. Josh is like, this seems like a safe time to cross. I think I can get to the other side. And so he crossed. And that's the difference. We can't just look at the action itself and not the context of it and how it has gone about and say they're the same thing. They're not. This is an owner who knows that he's probably making personnel decisions on the coaching stuff at the end of the year, saying, hey, I need you in your job right now to think long-term about this and take these deals seriously. And we are not prioritizing current winning. I'm not going in my evaluation. And this is probably on some level how it goes. I am not prioritizing in my evaluation of you, a win number. If you win an extra game because of Montez Sweat and I hate your process, I don't care. I'm firing you. If you lose an extra game, but this team starts playing better, their trajectory is good, and we have more capital for the future, as I make my decision whether to keep you or not, that's actually going to be a bigger positive for you. It's not about the winning. It's about the culture changing, because the culture right now is not good enough. There's not a culture of accountability in anything. And that, by the way, includes a head coach who in a press conference on Sunday after a tough loss where he made some mistakes, passed the buck to other people. Just saying. 301-230-0980. Maybe one more, Ant. We got time for a quick one. Let's go to Robert in Annapolis. Robert, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. View from an outsider. It's unfortunate that the fans of the team often don't get to enjoy or focus on the current season before they have to already move on to the next season. I've sensed that this has happened several times before. But, you have a new ownership. This is just the first of many changes. I mean, come the off season, it's going to all turn over the front office, most of the coaches, and some of the other players, many of whom may be favorites of the fans. So on the bright side, this is going to give the opportunity for the younger defensive linemen, the names, to give an opportunity for what they can do. I mean, the defense is ranked near the bottom of the league. So, I mean, it's right. Regardless of what you think of the two players that just got traded or what they got in exchange, that's not like staying the course was going to be beneficial. I do think they sort of just gave up on Chase. I would have just played him out and see what he could do because of the investment. And that's the root of Rivera's failure. That first year when he came in 2000, very quickly, he had the second pick in the draft, and teams were giving a king's ransom to move up to grab quarterbacks. Tua and Herbert were available. He should have slid back. I know this is past history, but the point was he had the opportunity to move back and get a slew of high draft picks, rather than add another defensive lineman, which they already had.
Yeah, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. And I think that there was some second guessing at the time because they had Chase was the last of the four. But Chase was seen as a generational prospect, and you don't pass up on guys you think are going to be Hall of Famers. And I think one of the indictments of Rivera is not getting the most out of that guy. Like, you're supposed to be Mr. Accountability, Mr. Culture, Mr. Whatever. With talent that good, why couldn't you get a D-line coach, a D coordinator, and yourself to get Chase where he needs to go? And I think if he goes to San Francisco and gets there, that's going to make it all the more frustrating and all the more damning of the current administration for not maximizing that talent. John Keim, ESPN NFL insider for the Commanders, joins us next. The great, legendary Cakes with us here on The Hoffman Show. show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. 5 o'clock each day. If you're new to the show, we do a little segment we like to call Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Today's guest, one of my great friends, the host of the John Keim Report, which also has a live stream tonight on YouTube at 7:30. So make sure you check that out on the Empire Media page. Of course, his day job is to write for ESPN.com, where it has been a busy day for, well, you probably guessed it based off the podcast tease. It is the John Keim Report. Ladies and gentlemen, John Keim. Cakes, how are you?
What up, Craig? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to have you on. What a day to have you. We don't get to do this often, and there is plenty to talk about. Let's just go chronologically here. Sweat, they trade to Chicago for a second-round pick, which I think most people think, barring something weird happening with the Bears, is going to be a very good second-round pick. When did you kind of get the feeling like, oh, wow, they could get a really valuable piece in return for Montez, and how hard was it for them to, even with that on the table, part with a guy that they really like?
Yeah, I think, well, for that value, I think it's a lot easier. That is a high second-round pick. So I think, yes, listen, over the weekend, and late last week, you'd hear third-round pick, and that was always you're going to always have to at least start there. So that was always going to be a starting point, but the second-round pick is what you kept hearing that they wanted, and you really can't give up a guy like Montez Sweat for something lower than that, in my opinion, even more so than Chase for a variety of reasons. And so I think yesterday you'd hear, and I know Ben Standing reported it, and I heard it as well later, which was third-round pick, but a conditional one that would turn into a 2 if you extend them. And without knowing for sure, I think that may have been from Atlanta. So, that, and I know Atlanta was very much interested in him. He was interested in Atlanta very much. So that made sense. So if the Bears going to get him, you got to go higher. And they did. And, now the question is for them to make it work, to keep him around, you may have to tag him, because I don't know, is that a situation you want to re-sign? I mean, I guess we'll find out, and if anybody pays you, then it works. But I think, that's on the Bears end. But from this end, a high second round pick now gives you that's now 3 picks, top 50. And that's pretty good.
No doubt. And that's in a loaded draft. And I'm excited, actually, bottom of the hour, we're going to have Trevor Sikkema from PFF, who does draft stuff year round, talk about what that means in this particular draft, where they're going to need a lot of different pieces. The O-line hopefully finally gets addressed. We'll see about quarterback, all that kind of stuff. But then Chase comes along, the deal later. A lot of people thought, maybe they'd be done after Montez. Nope, they trade both. And the value, I think, is the biggest question here, John. What was the market for Chase Young, and why does it seem, based off his youth, his potential, to be so depressed?
The knee. It's simple. It's the knee. And, there were definitely concerns. I talked to multiple people throughout the process, and especially over the last 24 hours, who all said the same thing. I don't want to say whether it was questions or concerns about the medical. And so that's going to depress the market. There was interest in him because a lot of teams were calling in, and this wasn't a recent thing. Teams have been calling on these guys for a couple months. This is not new. So this is not something that starts to heat up because oh my God, the trade deadline's near. Let's start calling. These have been ongoing discussions for a couple months. So they knew that teams would be interested in it, but again, the medical was always something. And I hear it from other teams, other people involved. Would that be a hindrance? And then you look at a team like the Niners, well, it makes sense. They had multiple third-round picks. And if he doesn't stay there, they could get it back as a comp pick, but it's not a huge loss for them to give up that capital. So they made sense. So I knew that they were interested. You'd heard the Bears at one point, and that's why I was surprised that Montez went to the Bears and not Young. But I think, again, the Niners made sense because of their extra third-round picks. But that definitely hurt his market. And I think the other part is then it's the durability, but then it's also the the lack of a contract for next year. So that all plays into it, and that's why, because clearly the guy has a lot of talent, and in a one-for-one world, he's going to get more, but that's not how it operates here.
Right. John Keim.
Other teams got more.
Yeah. John Keim, ESPN, is with us. So, John, this kind of gets me to the Brian Windhorst, and I know you're familiar with this meme as an NBA guy yourself, like the Brian Windhorst, like, why would they do that kind of thing here, right? Because if that is the case, right, the medical, well, then you've got 9 games to see how he plays. You hope he plays well, and even if you tag and trade him in the offseason, it seems like you could get more. But they did it now. Why now? And to me, the most plausible thing, and I don't know all the details, but I can read some tea leaves, is they might think this is an addition by subtraction situation. And you look at, I watch the tape. You watch the tape. I work with a guy who watches more tape than anybody in Logan. We see the effort level on some of these plays from Chase. We also heard his comments a couple weeks ago where he's like, I have to be a better leader in this. And you're like, well, what are you doing? What are you waiting for? And so, is there, I don't know, what you know here and what you can say, but, is there an addition by subtraction element that answers the why now question?
Listen, anybody who wants to read between the lines can read that right now. So, you're not doing it if you think he can still – if he's going to really help you win. This is a group that has to win, but they also were tasked with making smart football moves. And they don't, he clearly wasn't going to come back here, because why would you take a third rounder for him now? So yeah, you can can read between the lines on this one. This isn't a fire sale. This wasn't a demand from the owner that you got to do this. This is a team that thinks that they can still compete, even after trading 2 of their former first round picks. And, it's funny, Craig, because – and we'll see if they're right. Here's the other – Chase Young is going to a good spot. The guy can still rush the passer. There are things that he's still a freakish talent, But I also wonder, Craig, too, and you're a basketball guy. Sometimes I look at this defensive line, and I thought it was telling what Ron Rivera said Monday when we asked him about the line, and he's, just have they met expectations? The answer is they've just been inconsistent. So they've been inconsistent for a couple of years with these 4 first-round picks together. It wasn't going to change. So why invest in that? And if you think it can be improved. But I go back to the basketball analogy, which is you have 4 guys who are alpha male, 20-point alpha male scorers. And does that always work? I think that's tough. So I think, you can get – I think what you want – I think what they're going to do with this setup is you have 2 high-priced, very, very good defensive tackles who have made the Pro Bowl, deservedly. And now you're going to put in ends who the whole do your job mantra, I think, that'll become a bigger thing. But, that you rush discipline, right? All that stuff. And here's the other thing, Chase Young would get criticized a lot for, or at least pegged for, he's freelancing. All those guys were doing that after a while. So it wasn't just him. So it's unfair just to say it was him. However, you can look at, and again, you can read between the lines however you want in this one and probably be accurate. But I think that if they really wanted to keep him and make it work, they would have found a way.
Right. John Keim, ESPN, is with us. You mentioned that this is not like a demand from ownership. What were the nature of the conversations, as far as you know? Our friend and your former ESPN colleague, now with The Athletic, Diana Rossini, reported that Josh Harris did have some input here in terms of at least some direction. What color can you provide to kind of detail that out?
Yeah. I've been talking about that. That's not – he's the owner, for God's sake. Of course he does.
People seem to forget that.
Jesus, the guy paid $6 billion. Of course he's involved. And, this is something I've been talking about. That's just – yes. Anyways, no comment. But it's of course he's involved. He was always going, the whole thing with Harris, and I've talked about this a lot, mentioned it in story or whatever, that the whole, with him, his MO has been bring me information, get information, bring it to me. Let's make a good decision. That's how his other organizations work. And it's how he's working here in this case. So I think the funny thing is, Craig, a lot of people were like, well, how could Ron Rivera be making this decision. He might get fired, blah, 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 which is all true, and it's all fair. But if you're this coaching staff, the way you can save your job is to A, make a good football decision with these moves, and then B, win. If you don't make the good football decision but win games, I think you're gone, right? Because like this guy's going to want people who make good football decisions, and that's how they're going to view this. And because it does, I don't think it's 2 years ago when they didn't have these guys, they were 4-2. They didn't have Sweat and Young for 6 games. They were 4-2. So it's not like, and their defensive numbers were dramatically better for whatever reason. But the point is, they won without them. They played well without them. Whether it was because they weren't there, that you can debate that. But the numbers are what they are. So they don't have to feel like they're punting on their season. But from a staff standpoint, this is the right move. Now go win. And if you don't, somebody else will benefit from all these picks.
How do you think their chances change of that? Like, they got rid of 2 players that are exceptional individual talents. We just talked about the details of what's happened when they've been out in the past. There's no argument to be made that like this was working, the current setup. They're 28th. I've said these stats a million times today. They're 28th in defensive DVOA. They're 31st in points. They're 31st in yards. They're not good on that side of the ball.
No.
So when you talk about how it functionally works now, like what, and hey, now the mission is to go win. I guess the question really is like, what chances do you give them of that actually working out in their favor? Or is this a fundamentally flawed football team that has 9 games until the plane lands on the runway that it seems like is in sight?
Listen, to think that this is going to be like, okay, these guys are gone, they're going to play better. I'm not going to go there because I can't. I know what they did in the past. The coverage has been bad all year, and now, first of all, like A.J. Brown is tremendous. So, like coverage all year, they've given up big play after big play after big play. And it's not just because, these guys are freelancing up front. And again, it wasn't just there are 2 of them, right? It was, after a while, it just felt like, hey, this guy's doing this, I'm going to go do this. And not all the time, but certainly it felt like that at times. So it can't just be like, okay, these guys are gone. Now the coverage is going to be better. Now they're not going to make, now they're not going to blow a coverage assignment that leads to a Devontae Smith touchdown. You know what I mean? You still got to do all that. You still have to protect Sam Howell. But I think the feeling certainly is if Howell and the offense can play the way they did Sunday, it gives them a chance. And, but again, they still have to play better on defense. I mean, I'd be silly to think that this is going to be the magic elixir to turn this defense around. They have to play better, and they have not shown that they can be consistent. But the weird thing with this defense has been that the last couple of years, it's like they're really bad for one half and really good for another. But can they do that? I don't know.
That makes all of us, John. That's why they play the games. As an old man in a probably a Paisley tie once said. All right, John Keim, ESPN. You can read his work there. I definitely want to read his coverage on ESPN.com, but also do not miss the John Keim Report. Phenomenal podcast. It's kind of become a running joke, John, as you know, because you actually listen to Take Command, which we very much appreciate. Yeah. But you very frequently get shout-outs on that show because the podcast is great, the John Keim Report, and that includes his live stream tonight, 7:30 on the Empire Media page on YouTube. Cakes, always appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you soon, and thanks for the time here on the radio.
I appreciate it, and if you're joining me tonight for the live stream, bring some Twix bars and some Kit Kats. Thank you.
There you go. By request. Make sure get Cakes what he wants. All right. Thanks, John. That is John Keim, everybody. Quick reaction to that. Next, maybe sneak in a call or two, and then Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema joins us coming up at 5:30. The Commanders have all these picks now. What can they do with them? Trevor covers the draft year-round. He's phenomenal. That's coming up here on the Team 980. They get real Icarus-y, to go back to your Greek mythology days. You remember the story of Icarus, Anthony?
Not quite, Frank.
What do they teach you at Georgetown Prep? Icarus, the guy who flies too close to the sun.
Nope.
What do they teach you at Georgetown? Anthony, I think you just put your job at risk at Georgetown Prep.
Word.
There's no way that they did not teach you the story of Icarus at Georgetown Prep.
We actually did a lot of Greek mythology, though. We didn't talk about Icarus flying too close to the sun.
Yes, you did. You don't remember it. I feel very confident. Who can we call at Prep to confirm this?
I mean, I will just do that right now, actually.
Okay. I would like you to ask someone of authority, do we teach about Icarus?
2 hours later.
Did we ever check in on that, Anthony?
Yeah, my classmates actually texted me and said, yeah, we've done it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to figure out where you were on that day of class at a later date.
You're right.
Last night, Aryna Sabalenka makes the U.S. Open final, the Belarusian player, and here's how it sounded on Belarusian television.
Aryna Sabalenka! Вамо! Что Арина недостойна звания первой ракетки мира.
Yeah.
Получите! Распишитесь!
Oh, yeah.
Rising up, back on the street. Did my time, took my chances. When the distance, now I'm back on my feet. Just a man and his will to survive. So many times it happens too fast.
Oh, keep
you
going.
change your passion for glory. It's the eye of the tiger. It's the thrill of the night. Rising up to the challenge of a rival. And they lost, no survival. Все, ребята, я сдулся.
10 out of 10. No notes. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. And I literally just hit publish at Craig Hoffman on YouTube. My open today, my instant reaction to the Commanders trade is now up. In the next commercial break, will copy and paste that over to the Team 980's YouTube page to watch on demand as well. So if you missed my initial reaction at the start of the show, you can check it out there. You can also check it out on the podcast feed. Anthony is the, by the way, Anthony, you haven't been on camera at all today. Anthony dressed up for Halloween, everybody. We love that. Anthony, full lumberjack mode. Not quite the best Halloween costume we're going to see from someone on the show this week, though. Why are you showing your butt to the camera?
I was showing my boots.
Your boots. Here's the thing. Because of where the lower third graphic is,
oh, okay.
Your boots didn't make it, and it just looked like you were sticking your butt out towards the camera.
That is crazy. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody.
But you should just be like, you're welcome, and then just make it super awkward. Now we just see the bottom of your... Oh, there you go. All right. We got it.
Oh, yeah. My hips now.
Yeah, stretch it out. Getting old sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You were laughing at me not that long ago.
I wasn't.
And look at you now. Yates, by the way, on Around the Horn, and Clinton should be good to join us tomorrow from Arizona, where, of course, the World Series is continuing on. He was emo Jimmy Butler from Media Day on Around the Horn today. Just phenomenal. They crush Halloween on Around the Horn. I'm not a big Halloween guy myself.
I was about to say, did you dress up or were you planning on dressing up?
Oh, darn, I forgot.
I mean, there's always still, there's an hour and a half left in the show, so.
That's true. And I am doing the show from home today.
Yes, you are.
I don't have any costumes around. What can I do? Should I just wear like a different shirt every single segment? That'd be a funny bit.
Let me brainstorm because I'm not going to lie. I came up with some quick Halloween costumes for CK, like real quick.
What'd you tell our boss to do? Oh, Mr. Well, that's
Mr. Clean.
What'd he say to that? Hey, you're a white bald man. You want to be Mr. Clean? Did he just flick you off and run away?
To a lesser degree. What else? There were some other ones. I gave him like 3 different Halloween suggestions, but he didn't follow through with it. I can't think. I know. Mr. Clean was one of them. I'm stumped right now. I can't remember. I know it was 2 more though. Clary was over there. There were some people. I had a little.
All right, we'll see if we can get those by the
I
end of the show.
figure it out.
I could just go get my Aces shirt and then just start taking shots and be Asia Wilson.
Okay. Get a headband.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Trying to think what else I got.
Ooh, you know who you possibly could be? Sheen from Jimmy Neutron.
Because my hair's all.
Yeah, because you have long hair.
Yeah, I mean I don't think I get my head in the shape of a triangle.
Well, that too.
I could just be Jimmy Neutron himself with the hair, right? He had a. Yeah, I feel like more Jimmy than Sheen.
All right, yeah. There you go.
Just go get a blow dryer in the break and just flush this thing out as much as I can.
There you go.
There's that. All right, let's get a quick call in on the Chase Young trade. 301-230-0980. Trevor Sikkema joins us in about 5 minutes talking NFL draft now that the Commanders have all these picks in it. Let's go to Michael. Michael, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, so I understand the Montez Sweat trade because essentially you got the same pick that you moved up to get him. If I'm not mistaken, he was like 30th in the first round, and this will be in the first 5 of the second round. So, I get that from a value perspective, the fact that he's 27. And I'm not unhappy with the Chase Young trade just based on the fact that, yes, he is an incredibly physically talented guy. But there was just something about how this defense performed when he was in the lineup. Even week 1, I mean, sans the Giants game, every game that Chase Young played this year, they gave up 30 or more points, even with his talent. So there was something about the chemistry. Sometimes you love the girl and she's beautiful and fun, but somehow you're just not clicking and it's just not working. Yeah. And you just got to walk away. And I just feel like collectively the unit will be better without him, even though he's a great talent. Now, to be fair, he's never once been thought of or compared to T.J. Watt or any of the Bosas or Khalil Mack. Like, he's never blown a game up in that way ever, right? So even though I think you expect that from the number 2 overall, we never saw that in 4 years. Don't forget that.
Right. Michael, thanks for the call. It's a good one, and you make a lot of good points, and that's why today happens. And there's just a disconnect with how of Chase's potential and Chase's production. And he's super talented, and he's shown flashes of brilliance this year, and he has been one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. But I cannot stress enough, there's more to the job of defensive end than pass rush win rate. And it is how you finish in sacks, and he's got more pressures than he is sacks, just like Sam, right? There was that. I'd actually be curious to see this stat. And, I don't know if Trevor's going to know this off the top of his head, even though he works at PFF. Believe it or not, every person that works for PFF doesn't know every PFF stat. But PFF is one of the places that tracks pressure to sack. How often when there's a pressure does it turn into a sack? And Sam Howell on the quarterback side for most of the year was the worst guy in the league. Whenever he was pressured, 30% of the time, it would turn into a sack versus Mahomes, it was literally 2%. So what is that for defensive ends? And for Chase, I don't know how good that number is. But he definitely had some sacks this year. That's great. But how many pressures do you ultimately get? But also, how are you against the run? What kind of energy do you bring to the game? And that's the stuff where Chase is not at an elite level, even if he's got the most important skill at a pretty high one, which is beating your man and getting pressure on the quarterback. And with that, that's how you wind up getting traded for a compensatory third instead of a first, even though that was your potential, along with concerns about the medical and all the other things that we talked about with John Keim at the top of the hour. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, Trevor Sikkema of Pre-FF joins us next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So the Commanders have traded Chase Young for a compensatory third-round pick. I think more importantly, at least for this discussion, they've traded Montez Sweat to Chicago for what will be a high second-round pick. And it is our pleasure to welcome back to the show my good friend Trevor Sikkema, who works for Pro Football Focus, does their draft show, is on the NFL draft year-round. And Trevor, the reason I wanted to have you on is because all of a sudden the Commanders have multiple top 50 picks. Like, who knows where their pick's going to wind up? They could package some of those to trade up. They could stay put. And Well, I want to know what they've just gotten themselves into, and who better to ask than you. So thanks for the time, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. This is, I don't cover the NFL as closely as I do the NFL draft, but trade deadline time is always a lot of fun because the draft order will always change. Maybe not at the very top, but Washington now becomes one of those teams that when you head on over to PFF Mock Draft Simulator, they're one of the more fun teams to draft with because they've got 5 picks in the first 3 rounds now. So it's a good time to talk draft, no doubt about it.
So the thought going into this draft, obviously, like Caleb Williams at the top, Drake May's right there. There's a bunch of other quarterbacks. As we're halfway through the college football season, what's the quarterback strength in this class, and what effect might that have on the other elite players in it?
No, this class is really exciting, and I'm trying not to just sound biased because I love the NFL draft and the process, but when you look at what would be the 3 certainly pillar positions, premium positions, I should say. It's quarterback, it's pass rusher, and it's offensive tackle. All 3 of those are really strong. And then you probably throw in lockdown corner there as well. And then I know a lot of people look to wide receiver as one of those premium positions, though it's been drafted as such over the last couple of years. Both of those are strong as well. So you have a really, really alluring draft class. It's a good year to have a lot of these picks. And so I did not think that Washington would be this all in on this upcoming draft. Certainly it feels like a make or break year for that coaching staff. I didn't think that they would be this big of sellers at the deadline, but man, for them to get a very early 2nd round pick, now holding 2, and to get another 3rd round pick, now holding 2 3rd round picks as well, that bodes well for them to really have a nice slingshot into what we think is going to be this next wave or new winning window kind of coming up as they rebuild a little bit here.
So the offensive tackle spot is definitely one where, like, Charles Leno's been pretty good for them for a couple of years now, but if you want to go draft a young stud there, no one's going to complain. Wiley's been a bit of an adventure at right tackle. He's been more fine than people realize, but like he's still Andrew Wiley. And so those positions in particular, the tackle spots, if that is where they want to go high in this draft, who are some of the names that folks should be watching over the next couple of weeks of college football to see what they look like?
Yeah, certainly they're holding the number 11 overall pick, and you think with as much as they were selling their pass rush this week, they're probably going to end up in the top 10 when it's all said and done, and I think they'll have a chance to pick. One of the big 3 at the top that I have right now is Olu Fashanu from Penn State. He's their left tackle. Joe Alt, the left tackle from Notre Dame, and then Talisa Fuaga. Not a lot of people know him. He plays out at Oregon State. He is their right tackle there, but I think all 3 of those guys are future NFL pros. You get a little bit further than that, guys like J.C. Latham, the right tackle from Alabama, Amarius Mims, hasn't played a ton, but the right tackle for Georgia, a lot like Broderick Jones, what we saw last year from Georgia, where not a ton of experience with Jones, but the movement skills, the potential, the size, it's all there. It's the same thing for Amarius Mims. And so no matter where they are picking in the first round, they're going to have an opportunity to select one of these guys. And it just feels like a lot of people, when I've talked to those who have been doing mock drafts for Washington and fans of the Commanders as well, that seems to be where they go. So whether it's a right tackle or a left tackle, they're going to have the opportunity to pick any of those players. Of the 3 at the top that I think would probably go in the top 10, Fashanu's just, man, he's so good at pass protection. And he's got to get stronger. There's no doubt about it. I think the Ohio State tape a couple weeks ago, you shed some light on the fact that he's got to get a little bit bigger. He's got to get some more strength. He's got to be able to anchor better because Ohio State had a clear game plan to just go right through his chest. And that's about as good as anybody's gotten Fashanu throughout the last 2 years of him starting. Joe Alt, he's just been such a steady left tackle from Notre Dame, getting better every single year. He's 6'8". He's massive, great, solid prospect to get. And then Talisa Fuaga, man, I think that this guy's got some of the meanest streak that you could see in an offensive tackle. When he is blocking you in the run game, he is not just trying to get in front of you. He's trying to bury you to the sideline, to the ground, make sure you're not getting back in the play. And then he takes a lot of that mentality towards pass blocking as well. So it's a good year to need an offensive tackle. So if that's where Washington wants to go, there won't be any shortages of guys in the first round, or I would even say in the second round as well.
Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus, with us here on the Hoffman Show. And suddenly, Trevor, they also need pass rushers. Amazing how that works with these two trades today. And before we get to some of the names in this draft, I just had this thought in the last segment responding to a caller, and I'm curious how this plays into your analysis and what you can tell us about this stat. But we've heard a lot about sack to pressure, or pressure to sack ratio, sack to pressure ratio, however you want to ratio it, with Sam Howell on the quarterback side of things. But how does that kind of factor into a defensive end evaluation where, like, okay, Chase Young this year has got a lot of pressures, but they haven't necessarily turned into sacks at the same rate as some other elite guys have. So how does that stat tend to play into defensive end evaluation?
Yeah, I think that pressures to me are the more telling stat than sacks are. But there's no doubt about it that the guys who are able to finish the play and get that sack statistic, I think that's a appropriate bonus to say, hey, not only is this guy getting a lot of pressures, but he's finishing in the backfield as well. I think another stat that we have over Pro Football Focus is a pass rush win percentage that we're able to take a look at. And that really individualizes the performance of the pass rushers themselves to say, hey, how often are they beating the offensive tackle in front of them? And it's not okay, if the play goes on for 3 or 4 seconds and then he beats the offensive tackle, that counts as a win. No. It's really, do you win off of your first move? Can you get into the backfield? Are you creating that kind of disruption? That's what really logs those stats and gets those numbers up high. Chase Young he has a much higher number in the pass rush win percentage category than he has his entire NFL career. He's up near 20%, and I think the best in the NFL are somewhere around 23, 24%. That's normally, the Myles Garrett's, the Max Crosby's, the TJ Watts. Those guys are somewhere around 23, 24, I think, when a season is all said and done. So those are a lot of better ways to evaluate pass rushers, because I would even say that, okay, if you take only one of them, certainly I would say that win percentage is probably the strongest, then it's pressures, then it's sacks, but you don't really get the whole story with how well a guy is playing unless you use all three. And I think that's the part that gets lost on a lot of people when they make arguments for, especially pass rushers. A lot of people like to cherry pick certain stats, and you got to paint the whole picture for these guys. And so that's how I would say we go about evaluating that.
Right, and then obviously there's the whole run game side of it as well, which is why a guy like Sweat is tremendous, and Chase this year was leaving more to be desired. All right, so when we look at the edge rushers for Washington, it's hard to know what kind of player they're going to want because we assume there's going to be a new staff. We don't know if they're looking at 3-4 players, 3-4 edges, 4-3 edges. Are these guys they want to set a good hard edge in the run game versus elite pass rushers? But what kind of crop are we looking at of edge players in this upcoming draft?
A lot of guys to choose from, I think, probably within the first 2 rounds of the draft. Now, obviously, if you're a good pass rusher, you're going to get picked within the first 2 rounds. And so when you hit on gems that are 3rd round and beyond, I mean, that's just a tip to your scouting department there. But look, I think that right now, good case for 5 or 6 edge players who all go in the first round this year. I think that guys like Latu from UCLA, who is already just such a technician with his pass rush profile. I think the same can be said about JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. These guys, wise beyond their years about how you get past these offensive tackles, how you attack the half man, what to do with your hands, not only initial pass rush moves, but also counters as well. You've got players who are really twitched up athletes. I think of Dallas Turner from Alabama, Chop Robinson from Penn State, Braylon Trice from Washington, these guys who are very explosive off the first step. They can win with speed, but man, guys like Robinson and Trice, they can win with power too. That speed to power combination where they're just going straight at your chest relentlessly, those dudes are tough to block, and we've seen that over the last couple of years in college football. Another name I'll throw out, Jared Verse from Florida State. I don't think any player in the country has increased their draft stock more than he has over the last 2 years. He was at FCS. He was at Albany's football program before transferring to Florida State and showing that he not only belonged in the FBS, he was one of the best in the nation at it. So he's another guy who I think has that power-speed combination. So there are plenty of different players, of guys who come in all different shapes and sizes. But I think, again, you'll have the opportunity to, whether it's in the first round or even at that top of the second round, now that they have that selection, you'll have your chance to pick an edge rusher that could be a starter for you.
No doubt. And that's one of the fascinating things to me is if the draft is this deep, you probably wind up taking 2. But if there's a guy you love, they now have the ammunition to move up, which is going to be fun. And obviously the position you most likely move up for is quarterback. They're still very much in the Sam Howell evaluation category. And I think probably if you had to lean one way or another right now, you like what you see from Sam. You try to move forward with him because contractually it just makes so much sense. But if the next 9 games go sideways and they are in the quarterback market, how has that class developed after being so hyped before the season?
Oh, no, I think that it's still fantastic. Look, I know that Caleb Williams has struggled lately for the first time in his college career, and a lot of people are freaking out about that. But the things that Williams is able to do, it's rare, and that's stuff that you still covet. I think Drake May is fantastic. I was pretty in on Bo Nix before the season started. He had a fantastic year last year, and I think that he is having just as good of a year this season. So I think he's a first-round quarterback as well. You've got guys like J.J. McCarthy and Shedeur Sanders who have improved a lot, I think, over this season, who could be first-round picks. And then an interesting one's Michael Penix Jr. from Washington. He's got some insane numbers. I don't know if he's the front runner for the Heisman or if he's in that top 3, but I know he's close to the very top just because of what he's been able to do with that team. He's a gunslinger, man. If you want a guy who could push the ball down the field vertically, give his receivers a chance to go get the ball, and as we've seen with Washington's offense, have the chance to put up a lot of points, I think he can be your guy. I think a big wild card for me is probably Jaden Daniels from LSU. Last year, he really focused on keeping the turnover-worthy plays down, and he absolutely did. This year, he's getting a little bit more aggressive. He's keeping that ratio of turnover-worthy plays down, not as low as it was last year, but the big-time throws and the average depth of targets a lot further up. So he has just improved every single season, whether he was at Arizona State or whether he's now at LSU, and I think that he is somebody who gives you that dual threat ability as a rusher as well. So, man, those 7 quarterbacks right there, I think those are all guys who could be those first-rounders wherever you're picking.
That's a huge number, and that is definitely going to majorly impact the shape of the draft so many months from now, but also so few months from now. Nobody knows that better than Trevor Sikkema, who hosts the draft coverage, their lead draft insider at Pro Football Focus. Trevor, always appreciate your time here on the radio. Great stuff as always, my friend, and talk to you soon.
Yeah, of course, my friend. Anytime.
That's Trevor Sikkema, everybody. PFF, they've got YouTube shows. They've got podcasts. Trevor does so much on all of them. And as you hear, he's great. He's so on top of his stuff, and very excited to have him on the show today because, look, the Commanders aren't giving up on this season. They're not tanking. They're not punting. They think that, and based off of how they've played defensively this year, makes sense. They think they can play at least as badly as they have, if not better, without Young and Sweat. But realistically, they have set themselves up really well in what, as you just heard from Trevor, is a monster draft, assuming things hold and these prospects turn out to be what we think they are right now. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. 6 o'clock coming up. We get back to the on-the-field product with Linnell. It is Overreaction Tuesday time. I'll be totally transparent with you. We taped that earlier today, so there's a little bit of Montez reaction, but that was before the Chase trade, so we have a little bit of thoughts from Linnell on Montez. If you want his Chase reaction, he's on Overtime tonight over on 106.7 The Fan. But we'll kind of wrap up some of our thoughts on the trade before we get back to the current version of the Commanders at 6. Next is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. All right, Mr. Lumberjack, back in our DC studios. Not that I'm not in a DC studio, it just is my home studio for today. This is one of the last show. Hopefully, Anthony, actually, this is the last show I do from this home studio, which is actually why I'm home, is because I have to go get keys to my new place after the show. So hopefully on Friday, if I do the show from home, one, I might be in studio on Friday because Lord knows with the movers and do we get the things set up? Is the internet all working? So Lord willing, I have a new background on Friday. Very exciting.
Uh-oh. Is it going to be a white wall, though?
No, so there's going to be some depth. I think what we're going to do is we have a staircase that's going to be coming up. And although that is a little risky, that is a logistic that we hadn't thought about. No one could, not that anyone would want to come upstairs during the show anyway, but if someone could come up the stairs, like Rachel could just come and magically appear behind me on the staircase during the show, but it'll have a nice depth. And then the goal long-term is, can we get some jerseys and some memorabilia hung behind me?
Okay.
That'll look pretty cool.
Okay. You about to juice up the little office.
We're also, the goal is also to have a second set where it's got I'm going to have a couch. And then if we have people in studio, let's say Yates is in town, right? This is one of my best friends, and we want to do the show. we have the couch set where we go sit on the couch, and then we can do the show from the couch with like two people just having a conversation.
Okay.
That's gonna take a little bit of time because we need that couch currently in our living room because we just ordered a new couch. By the way, couches very expensive.
Already know.
Yeah, very expensive.
I already know, man.
But where we got ours did have a sale, so that was nice.
You got to look out for the sales. Got
to be on top of the sales. All right. Anyway, enough
also,
about
Black Friday is approaching, so
yeah, we didn't want to wait because the problem with Black Friday.
Too many people.
No, well, it's after Thanksgiving, and some of the stuff, the furniture we need for Thanksgiving. Damn.
Yeah.
And to quote Anthony, damn. All right. Quickly before we get to Linnell and Overreaction Tuesday, your thoughts on these trades are, because we haven't gotten them from you yet today.
Yeah. I just feel as though. So at first I thought we were going to be done with the Montez trade. I didn't think Chase was going to get traded, but I definitely also understand, Chase getting traded. And it's more so this is going to position us for the future. And I think that's where I am right now. I'm more so looking forward to like the next regime and like how they're going to be positioned. So having, a ton of draft capital, having a ton of cap space, I think that's going to, set us up for, the future. And also, using the rest of the season to find out if Sam is our guy. I think that's just more so like where I am. But also, I think it was just time to, accept the fact that having all those defensive players invested on our defensive line just wasn't it. But also realizing that in the last 7 drafts, we've drafted a defensive player in the first round. So I think it's just time to reverse that, figure some other things out. And
it's got to be 6 of 7 because Jahan.
Yeah, 6 of 7. Yeah.
But still, that's a lot. And think of all the second round picks, right? Yep. Sure, there's a Sam Cosmi who's probably been the best second round pick they've had since I don't even know. Most of them in the Bruce Allen era were also terrible.
Really bad. Yeah.
If Phil Mathis has 3 more good games, then he's going to be one of the better second round picks they've had. And he's barely played in a year and a half. Quan's been not good so far.
AG.
Was Gibson a second rounder?
He was a second rounder.
Yeah, I mean Gibson's been one of the better ones, I guess, but it hasn't definitely been what they thought, and a lot of people. I was actually with Mike Renner this weekend, who used to work for PFF as their draft guy and is now doing some stuff with Locked On. He's just a really good draft analyst, and he's like, I have no idea what they were doing taking him in the second round. There's no way he should have been there. So it's I think you're dead on, man. It's always a bummer to give up good players, and both these guys are good players. But realistically, if you look at kind of the long-term vision of the franchise, they had an overload at one position. They've got a poor roster construction. They have now a ton of cap space and no pressure to give any of it to either of those guys next year. And because that's the thing too, right? If you just keep them and you franchise one and sign the other, you now have taken all that cap space and put it into the same position where and especially with how they're playing this year, you haven't gotten enough production to justify it. Nope. So now you have a chance between the cap space and the extra draft capital to go out and fix your roster pretty quickly. I mean, imagine if they go offensive tackle at, let's say they pick 14th, which is worse than they're scheduled to pick right now. Yeah. Let's say they win a couple games and all of a sudden they're picking 14th. You go offensive tackle and you get one of the better ones, right? That guy turns out to be a stud. Great. There's an anchor on your line. It makes your left guard better. It makes your center better. It makes everybody better. Cosmi continues to develop. Now you got 2 pretty good players there. Or you bring back Leno and you kick Wiley to guard or whatever you want to do there. Just have him be a backup mentor type of guy. You got options, right? But let's say they get a good tackle there. They get one of these stud pass rushers in the second round. And the Bears pick, they have their own pick a couple, 10 picks later to get whatever else. Maybe you go guard there.
Yep.
Maybe you go other tackle there. And you have that second rounder sit a year, or kind of be your swing tackle. There's just possibilities. Or the other thing that happens is, let's say there's a great linebacker or something at a position that is not a premium position, but you get a stud player because there's so many studs at the premium position that those quote-unquote ancillary guys fall. Like, you get a game changer. Let's say they don't bring back AG, and they get, like, an amazing running back in the second round. Like, game changer, modern.
You get, like, a Corum from Michigan if he falls that far. Or
pick your guy. But, like, you know, what they wanted Gibson to be in the first place. You know, there's going to be options. You go get second round, prime tight end territory. Go get a stud tight end to either pair with or replace Logan Thomas. Like, obviously, if you need quarterback, like, that's on the table. So I love where they're at right now. I know some people's rebuttal is going to be, well, they stink at drafting. It's like, there's no plan to make up. There's no amount of draft picks or anything you can do to make up for being bad at drafting. You can't just go sign all veteran players. It's too expensive. You can't build a roster that way. And it's very short-lived.
Yep.
So that is, like, assuming that the drafting is going to get better, which Harris hopefully drafts or selects the right people to do that, they're in a phenomenal spot with how this is shaping up right now. So that's cool. Now we just got to survive these last 9 games, which, by the way, they could be better. Defensively, they can't be much worse. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up next, it is Overreaction Tuesday with Linnell. Final hour here on the Hoffman Show. Team 980 always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It is time for Overreaction Tuesday. You get a lot of chances to hear from Linnell. He's on overtime tonight over on 106.7 The Fan. Technically, that starts at 6:30, but we love to keep you over here on the Team 980 until 7. I mean, you know, if the commercials time up, you want to flip back and forth. I guess I won't be too upset. Just kidding. I'll take it very personally. The point is, Linnell and I actually talked earlier today. We talked around noon, which was after the Montez Sweat news broke, but before the Chase Young news. So you'll hear our thoughts on the Sweat trade at the time. And then the main crux of what we do on Tuesday is looking back at Sunday's game, in this case, the loss to the Eagles. So without further ado, it is time for Overreaction Tuesday. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's Overreaction Tuesday time. Linnell is with us. Where can we catch you? We got overtime tonight?
Overtime tonight, overtime every day this week, I think, after today. So
there you go. All right, so over on 106.7 The Fan. The program actually starts at 6:30, but I will give permission to our audience to start listening at 7 because
the first 30
goes
minutes anyway.
To 7. So that's how that goes. But we're always great to have Linnell with us on a Tuesday. And we will get to kind of overreactions from the game or takes from the game, judge whether they're overreactions, where we are in the season. But let's dive into the trade today first. Montez Sweat to Chicago. You're going to get a high second-round pick, likely, unless all of a sudden the Bears turn into something that they're not right now. I don't think Montez is going to be the difference maker. They're bringing him in to be a long-term addition for them on the D-line. What do you think of it?
I like it for Washington. You were probably going to lose him for nothing this offseason. I think he's been here going 5 years now, has yet to crack double-digit sacks. I don't really look at Montez Sweat as a game changer. So, you know, anytime you get an opportunity to get a pick inside of the top 100, I think, you know, you have a chance to hit on a really good player. Chicago's not very good. They probably won't win a lot more games for the rest of the year, so there's potential that pick falls from anywhere between 33 and like probably 40 at the worst. The one thing that I will give pause to is, for whatever reason, Washington cannot hit on second-round picks, no matter who is selecting them. You even go back to Sua Cravens. I know that name probably gives people some, but, you know.
I know, because I was there.
Yeah, so hopefully this new regime is able to draft a lot better, but I'm happy for Montez, you know. Hopefully he gets to, you know, get a change of scenery, maybe a little bit closer to home. I don't know how close proximity Chicago is to Atlanta.
Definitely not closer to home.
He's going further.
Plenty of direct flights, but there's also plenty of direct flights to DC.
100%, and hopefully he likes deep dish pizza.
Yes, and cold, terrible, windy days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a must do for Washington, and negative round. What do you want him to do? Stop trying, and hopefully, like you said, it should probably do better. Yeah. But this is a attack level where Montez. The other thing about Montez too, is people don't realize how not. Or I think within the next he turns 29 at some point during next season. Let me double check this real quick. Yeah, he's 27 now. And September 4th.
So that means he's probably only going to get one big contract in his career.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing is, like, do you want to be the team that gives him that one? And, you know, with the edge rusher market where it is right now, you just can't afford to put that much money in. And no. I hate it because I think he plays so well off of Daron Payne. I would have, you know, as I've said during the show, like, I probably would rather have traded Chase Young if I had my druthers about it, but Chase is young. Chase is a more impactful pass rusher. And I think that they're hoping Chase rounds into form. It's also the kind of thing where the market for Chase, I think, is like, because Montez, we know exactly who he is as a player. That's an easier trade to make and feel like you're getting good value versus Young, where it's like, I don't know, is he good? Is he bad? He's still so young. He's still inexperienced. He's coming off the knee injury. He's still learning how to play at this level. Like, there's a lot of stuff, and he's already almost as productive, if not more productive, in a lot of statistical categories than Montez.
Yeah, and I think just looking at the production of both of them, I wouldn't have been upset if they both got dealt. I mean, you haven't really seen game-changing play from either of them. And when you've won as few games as Washington has over the past 4 seasons, I think, and I'm not trying to speak in hyperbole, anybody should be available if the price is right. That means 17 on offense. Now I know cap hits and dead money and all that affects deals, but like the point is, I think they need to tear this thing down to the studs. It's a group that likes each other, but maybe they like each other too much, Craig. Because I've never seen a team that likes each other so much, but then doesn't play hard all the time. So it's very interesting.
All right, let's get to the takes from the game / the takes from where we are in the season. Hit me with a take. Overreaction barometer is tuned up and ready to go.
My first take from Sunday is that I think the offense performed much better, not because of the changes on the offensive line, but the changes from Eric Bieniemy as a play caller. I thought the game plan we saw Sunday should be the game plan we see for the rest of the season. Open up with a quick passing game, get Sam Howell in rhythm early, try to run the football. We saw a couple of draws throughout the game as well. I love the game plan. And then you saw them counter off of the game plan as the game moves on. Teams start biting and squatting on your quick passing game, so you take them up top with Sam Howell. He makes a beautiful throw to Terry McLaurin in the red zone. So I thought offensively they were really good, but I don't know how much it has to do with the offensive line. I just think Eric Bieniemy was much sharper. And tell me if I'm overreacting. I think he called his best game as an offensive coordinator.
I agree. I don't think that's an overreaction. I think that is good analysis, my friend. It's almost frustrating. I've said this a couple times now, but like, where has this been? Like, what took so long to get this deep into the screen game, to get much more 3-step drop instead of all this 5-step drop? Like, the pocket move, there's all kinds of stuff that is just so good. And I think the reason it's frustrating, the reason I feel comfortable being that critical with it, is because we saw all this stuff in camp.
Yeah.
Like that is what we thought the offense would be coming out of camp. And then all of a sudden it's all this 5-step drop nonsense and Sam's getting murdered. And you're like, what happened to the stuff that was, oh boy. And so it had those Scott Turner-y vibes of just like, the answers are right here. Why don't you use them? I think the other thing too is I think Sam moved in the pocket like different quarterback level better than he
100%.
had the previous whatever number of games that have been 7 games. He really like slid around, and like there's a couple of pressures where he just gets out of the way and you're like, that's great. That's what you're supposed to do. And so I think part of that is the comfortability where he's like feeling the game better due to the play calling. I do think that like Larson probably also got some of the assignment stuff better. Yeah. There's probably an uptick there. That's probably the biggest change, but like not like Chris Paul was awesome. He definitely missed some stunts, like, and stuff that you'd expect from a guy who's in his second career start. So there's
Give him
definitely
credit, though. That B-Rob run that pops for 29. I mean, he just completely stonewall. I don't know who it was, but there was some
a big man movement.
Definite impact.
Yeah. So like Chris Paul was kind of what you'd expect, which is a little bit worse probably than Sadiq had been playing down for down. But some of the bigger mistakes don't happen, and the game plan's better. And I think you're dead on there.
The one thing I was also going to say, kind of making it funny, maybe Eric Bieniemy thought he was going to get traded by the trade deadline, so he thought, let me call my best game, but we know it's not possible to trade offensive coordinator.
No, that is true. That is like a very Rivera thing that has happened throughout Ron's entire careers. Right when the heat, like, there's the old like boiling frog thing where it's like, you know, if you drop a frog in boiling water, they jump right back out because they're like, oh damn, that's hot. But if you drop them in water and then like the heat turns up, that's how you boil a frog. I guess that's a thing people do.
There we go.
Because they don't realize that the gradual change. Rivera is like, this is getting very hot, and then he does something differently, or you know they play a better game, and that's just been him. Ron Rivera, not a frog. That's the analogy there. And it seemed like EB had a little bit of that on Sunday.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised. Like when you think about it, they kind of tricked us. I was talking to someone over the weekend, and they were like, "Man, I think it's funny how on Friday's practice they showed, or I think it was Wednesday's practice, they show Tyler Larson snapping to Sam Howell, and then Nick Gates was snapping to Jacoby. I thought Nick Gates was going to end up getting the start at guard. He is now on the bench. When you look big picture, I don't love that because of the fact that he was one of your free agent signings, and you whiffed on another one. And when you look at the track record of them in free agency, it sucked outside of J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, no, it's been really bad. But Linnell, I'm going to teach you a life lesson here, my friend. You heard of the phrase sunk cost?
Sunk cost, no.
Okay, so sunk cost is an economic concept that is basically says like if you've spent the money already and it's not working, it's a sunk cost. Doesn't mean you need to keep investing in it. Just take the loss and keep moving on. And to me, that's where you're at with Nick Gates. You have two young players in Sadiq and Chris Paul that you hope can be a part of your offensive line in the future. I would much rather just get them. Go, hey Nick, keep your great attitude around the building. We love your toughness. You seem to be a delightful human. Keep being a good dude. You're going to get your checks because that's how professional football works. But you're a backup center now.
Wish you would have had some sunk costs last year at quarterback. Holy cow.
That's probably a term I used at some point last year. Let's just say that. All right. Linnell's with us. It's Overreaction Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show. All right. What is your next take / overreaction?
I was very critical of the defense on Sunday, and I've been critical of them all year, but Sunday was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. This is the most underachieving unit in all of the National Football League in terms of sides of the football. Like off Miami's offense, they're overachieving probably or doing exactly what people thought. Chicago's offense maybe is underachieving because Justin Fields hadn't taken the leap we all expected. But the reason you talked positively about this Washington football team coming into the season was because of their defense. And the reason we were comfortable and confident with rolling with a 5th-round pick at quarterback was because of the defense. They have completely underachieved this year. I'm honestly baffled at the lack of production that they've gotten. Sunday was no different. They've allowed a 100-yard receiver in every week outside of week 1. And yes, I know Darren Waller had 98 yards last week. That's 100 in my book. It's not very good. Not very good.
The only other, I just did a quick standings glance to be like, worst bet, biggest underachievers in the league. The other one that would come to mind as a contender to me is the Giants offense.
Yeah.
The Giants last year offensively, kind of came up with a formula. Dable and Kafka and everybody did a good job. Daniel Jones looked like a completely different player. Saquon looked like they look like they've found something, and they have been awful. Obviously, Jones hasn't been playing, but they were not good when he was in. This weekend was an adventure and all adventures with Tommy DeVito coming in at quarterback where they ran the ball 36 times. DeVito, by the way, did you see his final stats?
I believe it was it -1 yards?
Yeah, it's 2 of 7, -1 yards. Aw, yeah. New York Giants football, baby. And they lost to them the week before. Anyway, the point is, the Commanders are supposed to be a top 5 unit. And, I had a YouTube comment on one of the videos being like,
never
we
read
need to
the
start
comments.
talking about them. That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow at this time, not today. But it was like, we need to start talking about them like what they are, a bottom 5 unit. And I was like, that seems harsh. Let me go look. Oh my God, they're second worst in the league in yards and points. They're a bottom 5 defense. They're a bottom 3 defense.
I think they're 28th in defensive DVOA. So
they're terrible.
They're horrible.
And the thing is, and this is where it's so hard, and where Logan and I got into it a little bit on Take Command recording today is from a process standpoint, it's actually not terrible. The problem is they have they have these DBs that are in position all the time to make plays and never make a play.
Don't.
And so the touchdown to AJ Brown, Forbes is in position. Quan's late and a bad angle. Really, Quan should get there. So maybe that's a half good example, but Forbes is rolling that. Forbes just needs to make a freaking play. The BSJ one, the one-handed catch, congratulations, AJ Brown. You're a monster. He can't be in better position. The only way AJ Brown makes that catch is if it's outside with one hand, and he does. And you're like, well, shoot, if he's going to do that, what the hell do you want me to do? But the Danny Johnson, Julio Jones play is a perfect example. Danny plays that technically perfect. Hand through Julio's hands, rips at the ball. Julio's too strong. He's too big. He keeps the ball. Cam's a second late to hit the hit, but makes a hit that definitely separates a lot of dudes from the ball. And Julio Jones hangs on. Eagles made plays, Commanders didn't. And so from a process standpoint, the process on a lot of this stuff, coverage bust aside, is pretty good. But they've had a couple of those busts, and I think the big one goes back to the D-line, where if you want to help out your DBs, let's make it so the quarterback is feeling pressure. And the lack of pressure this year, especially in big spots, I think is that's where this defense is completely fallen apart.
And that's really where my comment stems from about them underachieving. Is it's in particular the defensive line specifically, like 4 first-round picks along that front. We all know the same song and dance. You mentioned them not getting pressure in the biggest spots. It just felt like watching the game that Jalen Hurts was never hurried. And he was pretty banged up. Like you saw a couple of plays like where he's like limping off the field. Like he was not right. And they still weren't able to get to him. So the only thing I would say from like a coaching standpoint that I was kind of frustrated with, heat him up, right? Like you see that he's limping. You see that you're getting no pressure. Like why not blitz?
So here's the thing. They blitzed way more than you think.
Really?
Like looking back at it, I was like, oh, especially early. And they got burned in some of the man-to-man situations, and Jack definitely backed off a little bit as the game went. But like part of it is, hey, if you want to be who you claim you want to be, you need to figure it out how to get that pressure. You need to win the one-on-ones. You need to, schematically be a little bit more creative and get the slides and whatever. Part of it is this Eagles offensive line is so freaking good. Like the way, not just like they will win their blocks, but they communicate and pass things off. And like Kelsey is so good at identifying the proper people that they're bringing 5-6 man pressures, and the Eagles have the numbers and they just win. Like they're in the right place, they're prepared, and then they win their blocks. And so there was actually way more pressure in terms of blitz calls in this game than anybody would imagine, which is not necessarily a good thing. It just kind of shifts the blame from the coaches to the players of like, well, if that's the case, eventually someone's got to win on one-on-one. And like John won a couple, Duran won a couple, but it gets back to the lack of finishing. We're like, can you bring, I mean, PFF had John with 6 pressures in the game. Allen had a good one, but he doesn't have a sack. Like, how do you make it so that Hurts has poorer throws because of that pressure? And it just didn't feel like they affected. Like I'm with you, man. Like it's incredibly frustrating, but then you go back and you watch it and you're like, well, damn, they tried. They gotta be better. It's not necessarily trying harder. It's doing better.
I think also, and I know we use this word a lot to describe like Jack's defense, they're so vanilla with what they do up front. They never overload the side. They never do anything fancy, it feels like, right? It's always this, it's either their 5-man Cinco front or they're lined up man on. We call it 5-0, and you just run and win your individual matchup. Like, guys haven't been winning their individual matchups really all year on a consistent basis. So at some point, I feel like you have to make a change in that area. Something else that I was frustrated with, I just don't, the lack of hustle from guys along the defensive front bothers me, especially when you're in a high-stakes situation. You're in an NFC's football game at home. So what if your initial power move doesn't work? That doesn't mean you just stand there and mirror the damn tackle. I was so frustrated with watching that on Sunday. And I know fans on Twitter are like clipping off stuff. That's all fine and dandy. I normally like get annoyed at that type of stuff, but the players need to hear it. Have some damn pride about your craft, man. What if we came on the radio and talked like this the entire time to try to get your attention? It just when they don't play hard and you don't see guys chasing the football, it lets me know that maybe there's like friction going on within the group, because you can't tell me you're watching film and Jeff Skanina isn't chewing people's ass out. Some of the stuff they're putting on tape is embarrassing, Craig. And I'm not trying to speak in hyperbole. Dog, you're pros, man. You're pros. Some of y'all don't have contracts and you want to earn contracts. Well, earn it. It's frustrating, man.
Yeah. So this is normally the point where I think everyone would expect me to shout you down and tell you to stop overreacting. And I'm not going to, because you're right. Yeah. Like this, and I typically hate this kind of stuff because I have so much respect for how hard the job is. But the first thing you said in there is, like, to me, the most important one, which is if your initial move doesn't work, that you can't give up on the play. And 99 was easily the worst offender on this, where if his initial move didn't work, he played patty cake with Jordan Mailata. And look, as I said on Take Command, sometimes it might look like you're playing patty cake with Jordan Mailata, and you're not. But it's just that Jordan Mailata's 6'8" and 400 pounds, and you're like, and moves like a nimble polar bear, and you're just like, oh, he's trying really hard. Mailata just pushes him away.
Day at the office.
Yeah, it's hard. But like you see when James and Casey are in there, and like Casey's sack, like there's a pursuit level there that you're not getting when Chase is on the field. And
even in the run game, though, Craig, I watched.
The run game's bad, man.
Like a bat out of hell coming off the edge, man. I never see that from our guys. Ever.
No, and that's the thing. It's like this is why I think the trade for Montez is like ultimately a good thing. Yeah, and why, if it's flipped and Chase is gone and Montez is still here, like I think Montez would have to pick it up some, and I don't know that Chase is going to, if I'm being totally honest, but like there is something to having a mix of playmakers and kind of do your job hustle guys on a D line. And they had too many playmakers and not enough do your job hustle guys. And you'd see it when those do your job hustle guys come in, either one at a time or even sometimes like the line play as a whole was just as solid or better when it's the twos. And why is that? Because guys are just all out going to where they're supposed to be. And I think there's also Logan mentioned this, and I think it's a really great point. Like, make Lane Johnson work. Make Mailata work. That's right. If that initial move doesn't work, and they're really smart, it's not going to work. They're not going to let you beat them with the thing that you want to do. Right. So even if you don't have like a great counter in your repertoire, or they're good enough to counter it, make them do it. Make them do that work. Try that for a couple snaps. Go to the sideline. Let your sub come in. Keep doing that. And they're not subbing out. Like, wear them down over the course of a game so that in a big spot late in a game, you're going against a tired tackle. And that didn't happen on Sunday. And thus the Eagles, fresh, great team, comes down, closes the game out. Commanders don't have it at the end. And that's how Philly winds up on top.
Yeah, this is my last piece on it. I hope I don't see that moving forward much longer, because now that I feel like it's been called out on Twitter, we know the people in Ashburn pay attention to Twitter.
It's so sad that you're right on that.
It's going to be a pride thing at some point, because that is not a good look, especially when you got teams trying to trade for you. Like, that ain't a good look. But I will say this about Casey in particular. He's got to get more snaps. I mean, his closing speed, and I'm not trying to guess, it looks like it's he looks like one of the aliens when he closes, like your TJ and your Micah and I'm not saying he has that type of ability, but man, you see flashes of it. If everyone on the defense played as hard as Casey Toohill played, they wouldn't be bottom 4 in DVOA. Point blank.
I think that's well said. All right, that's Linnell Willingham. You want more of him? 6:30. Technically he's on, but we'll let you change the state. We lock your dial in place because people still have radio dials, Linnell. Do you even know what a radio dial is? Have you ever had an analog radio?
Isn't that the twisty thing in the car where you turn the knob?
Yeah. Have you ever had to do that, whether it's on a car radio or your home radio, where you had to like truly tune your radio?
Craig, I'm a radio historian. That's how I started listening to sports on the radio. I swear.
I was just trying to figure out, like, because I also did, and we're 7-8 years apart in age, and like it's one of those things where like we're not like we're the same mostly generation, but like you probably don't remember printing off MapQuest directions.
Oh, never. I would.
Like, you've always kind of had GPS turn by turn on the phone.
TomTom. You have the little TomTom. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Okay. So that's like where your GPS journey begins. For me, it was like you had to go on MapQuest.com, type in your route, and then print off the directions. That was like the previous thing. And then like my grandfather somehow drove with a map in front of his face, and you'd be like, how can you see the road? You have a giant map of Long Island in front of your face.
How do you know where the exits are? I think it's the craziest thing that people are using maps. Like, that's honestly ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, but then you have people driving around right now listening to us be like, these young kids, we drop them, like, they're just idiots. They're lost without their phones. It's like, yes, this is how we grew up, as people who needed phones for everything. All right, anyway, the point is, Linnell's on overtime tonight. It starts at 6:30. He's there the entire week over on 106.7 The Fan, and he's with us every Tuesday for Overreaction Tuesday. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir, my man.
What's up, kiddos? It's your boy Clinton Yates from ESPN. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Tell your mama I said what's up.
They tell us we should not really engage in certain parts of the content process. We should definitely post our content. We should tease our content. Hey, tell the people when things are happening on the show. Put that out there on social media. Then make sure you share the content afterwards. But definitely do not engage with the people who comment on it. It's the deepest, darkest underbelly of the internet. No. Do not read the comments. But every single week, 5:30 on a Wednesday, what do we do, Anthony Haney?
We read.
Yep.
Those comments, baby.
I'm so glad that you gave us a really good one there, because next week we're gonna have a fancy new intro for this. We just got the big voice guy, old Jim Cutler, to do some stuff for us. And in my head, the fancy intro includes Anthony going, read those comments, and he just gave me the material I needed to work with. He didn't even know that. You didn't know that, Anthony. Tell the people you didn't know that.
I did not at all.
But next week, you bet your bottom dollar you're going to see it.
It's a running bit on the show, but also like an actual thing. I'm trying to learn French. My wife and I are going to Paris next year for the Olympics, so I'm trying to learn French. It's incredibly difficult. I'm very bad at it. Tips for someone learning French. You did the reverse. For people that don't know, you started as a French speaker, and I was reading on Wikipedia, so I don't know if it's true, but also Haitian Creole, first two languages, and then had to learn English, which I know is very, very difficult to learn when it's not your native language. French, English, they don't seem compatible. What's your tip for me as I try to learn French?
I would say watch movies in French with English subtitles. That's what I did. I watched a lot of movies in French, but I had the English. No, I watched a lot of movies in English with the French subtitles. So like movies, music, it's kind of something that's like easy, like on the brain. It's not too much information, but you can still enjoy it and you can see the conversation, because that's the hardest part. Learning like a little word, like to say like, hey, my name is this or whatever, that's easy. But holding a conversation, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, right now I'm really just trying to master, like, I'm American, do you speak English? Because I think in Paris I can get away with that.
Yeah, so je suis américain. Yeah. Et je ne parle pas français.
See, even the way you said that is not the way Duolingo says to say that. So I'll just have to come back to my new French tutor, Benjamin St-Just. BSJ, appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Sure.
Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up on YouTube as well at the Team 980, where we stream live each and every day, all 3 hours. Plenty of folks finding the show today for the first time. Subscribe to the Team 980, and of course, check us out on your radio if you're in DC. 980 AM, 1067 HD2 FM is another great way to listen. You get crystal clear FM quality on your HD radio, and other than that, you can listen anytime, anywhere on your phone. You have that cell phone device that you're addicted to? Yeah, me too. There's an app on it. It's free. You just type in Odyssey, Audacy, Odyssey, and you listen to us anytime, anywhere, not just 4 to 7, but you can rewind up to 24 hours. So if you miss something, you can always check back. And our podcast lives there as well. Not just me, but the Junkies, Kevin Sheehan, Chris Russell, all the shows on that free Odyssey app. Of course, today we've all been talking about the NFL trade deadline, and from Kevin's show on, we've known about the Montez Sweat deal. The Rooster had the live coverage for when Chase Young was traded. And Anthony, really, the more I've thought about this, the more excited I am. And in a weird way, despite the fact that you trade definitely like 2 of your 10 best players today, it reminds me to like be excited for the future. And I think so many people have wanted like Ron Rivera fired, for instance. That's the biggest, splashiest thing. It's like, Josh Harris, do something. And it's a reminder that, like, yeah, there's some stuff that needs to happen here. And there's like a long-term plan in place. And I do feel like Rivera is ultimately going to be gone. And I'm not saying that with like any glee. Like, this is a grown man with a family, and, you know, we shouldn't be celebrating people losing their jobs and their careers. But at the end of the day, this is the business, and I think that he will be gone by the end of the year. I think that Martin Mayhew will also be gone. I think they'll probably have a total blowout of the coaching staff unless the next 9 games are awesome offensively. Then you consider keeping Bieniemy and letting him be the head guy in charge as the head coach, and continuing some continuity with Sam Howell, hopefully not just next year, but in years to come. But realistically, like, it's this reminder that we're really thinking about setting up the long term here. And today, they made moves that were very smart for their long term. They're not performing with this idea that they have a dominant defensive line, and that's the key to their team. They need to distribute the wealth, literally and figuratively, amongst other position groups. And they have set themselves up. Like, it's kind of funny, the contrast between them and like the Wizards, right? The Wizards also tried to do this, and they unfortunately are doing it in a year where the draft is not very good. The NBA draft is, unless you get like Cooper Flagg at the top next year, who just committed to Duke and is seen to be as a pretty high value prospect, it's not a very deep draft, early like NBA leanings for next June. So the Wizards are in this rebuild mode, and it's like, well, shoot, like, how many draft picks do we actually want in 2024? Because there may not be very many places to use them. The Commanders are doing something that I think is smart, and if there's opportunities to make more deals before the draft, like, do it. Compile top 50 picks, compile top 100 picks in this upcoming draft, because this sucker is loaded. And whether they stay put or whether they combine some of those assets to trade up, they are in a good position to start a hopefully quick makeover of their football team into a winner, maybe even next year, but certainly, you know, with Sam Howell, if he's the guy at quarterback, within the next couple of years down the line.
Yeah, and I think that's the good thing about the NFL. Unlike, the NBA and the MLB, it might take years for, you to turn around your franchise. But with an NFL team, and if you do it, correctly, it doesn't take that long. You look at the Lions, you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, last year, both of those teams started out extremely slow and ended the season extremely well. And look at them this year. They're off to a great start. And those are two teams that, were looked at as the bottom until they actually underwent a full rebuild and finally, got some new leadership in there, and things are trending upward. So I think after everyone came to terms, yesterday and even on Sunday, that this team wasn't a good team, it's time to, look forward. And I think, trading, some of the guys that we traded today and just trying to, position ourselves for the future is ultimately what we're going to have to do. And we can still compete. But I mean, I hate that, we're still, good enough to compete. because again, it just sheds more light on us being stuck in this place of mediocrity where we've been for like so long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that like winning this year is going to help Rivera keep his job. Look, if they go 9-0 over the final 9, then like, yeah, cool. Like, let's have those problems.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that they're like Josh Harris is no dummy. He's not a new owner. He's not going to be duped. I've used my Nick Nurse theory a bunch where like, he's working over on the NBA side with Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse, two of the absolute smartest dudes in the league. And then he's coming having football conversations and he's like, hey, go get me information. Go get me data. And Ron Rivera is going to come back and be Ron Rivera. And you're like, I don't know that these two things are the same. So my longstanding theory is that like, it's going to be fairly evident to a very smart person in Josh Harris that this is the obvious move. With that said, like you move forward and you get the right pieces. And I think this is where like the new analytics guy comes in hugely. It's not just like what decisions do you make on fourth down. It's what positions matter, what traits matter, how do we measure them? Your drafting gets vastly improved by proper analytics and how you value players. I mean, that's been a huge problem with the Rivera era. It's not necessarily that they've just taken bad football players, it's that they've taken okay football players at mediocre spots. If some of these guys that are second-round picks, third-round picks, were fifth-round picks where they might have otherwise been drafted, then I think you're looking at a very different roster construction, and you get first rounders that should have been first rounders. And so can you plug those holes in the long term? Yes, clearly this roster design was a failure, and especially if Sam's good, and you finish this year strong, like whether you keep the continuity with EB, whether you go get someone else in the Peterson system and keep a lot of what you're doing, whether you frankly get a guy like a Ben Johnson. I mean, he's going to be the number one name on the market, it seems like, from the Lions, and have him bring his offense, which is very quarterback friendly. And I think Sam could pick up quickly and get going. Third system in 3 years, yes, but there's a lot of West Coast elements, a lot of similar elements to what he's been doing. And they kind of believe in, insulating the quarterback and what they've done with Jared Goff in Detroit and maximizing him. Like, you could hit the ground running pretty good next year. There will, of course, be a learning curve, but like you're talking about a 2-year turnaround at that point. Like by year, if Sam is really good and you draft well, by year 2, which by the way would be Sam's contract year, which is not the most exciting, but is exactly what the Eagles did. Like you might be able to do some stuff, and maybe you catch Sam and sign him to an extension before he gets crazy expensive, because I don't know if he's going to be good enough. Like, even if Sam works out, is he going to be good enough to be the next guy that gets the biggest contract in the league? Hopefully not. And so there's a lot you can do. John's deal will be up by then as well, so you can make some decisions there. But it starts with having the assets to be nimble and get the players that you need, and they set that up today. And then we'll see what happens the rest of the year, because I don't know how much the fall off is going to be defensively. There's not much room to fall. They've been at the bottom of the cliff. There's no hit. There's like, you trip over a rock when you're already in the valley. Like, you just fell off a cliff. That's not going to hurt that much more. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, real things, real people said into real microphones, including an absolute gem from none other than Linnell Willingham. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Housekeeping-wise, if you missed any part of the show today, some of the best of, obviously, in our podcast feed, you can rewind on the Odyssey app. I'm also compiling my initial take, John Keim joining us and Trevor Sikkema joining us from PFF, into a Take Command special episode. So if you want to subscribe to the Take Command feed, that's a good way to catch up as well. Tomorrow on the show, it's a Wizards game day, so Dave Johnson will join us at 6:15. Clinton Yates will join us from Arizona and the World Series at some point during the show as well. He dressed up like Jimmy Butler today. It was phenomenal. What else we got tomorrow, Anthony? Obviously, more reaction to all of this.
It's a great question, Greg. I think you touched on everything.
Okay.
So far, anyway.
So far.
We didn't do the weekend review today.
We didn't do that, but that's all right. At this point, the weekend happened. It's time for the weekend review, brought to you by
nobody. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Us and EJ stat of the night. EJ's Nito stat of the night. You hate to see it. Max Verstappen won again in Formula One. There's some soccer stuff that happened.
Did you see the Fury versus?
That was a big fight. Yeah,
Ngannou.
I didn't really see that. That's
controversial decision. Is all I'll say.
You hate to see it. All right, that was our weekend preview. Maybe that's why it's sponsored by
nobody.
If somebody sponsored it, we'd make sure it got in the show.
We're gonna have Ron.
Oh yeah, Ron Rivera speaks at 4 o'clock.
Sam.
Sam speaks earlier in the day, so we'll have cuts from that. Also, it's never read the comments. And boy, let me tell you, we got a lot of comments for the second straight week, although this week a lot of people are very, very into what I'm saying as opposed to last week where they were not. Speaking of things people said into microphones, let's end the show, shall we?
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, it's not often that we get to start with a native real things, if you will. But around noon today, I taped the Overreaction Tuesday segment with Linnell, which, by the way, is also now on YouTube at Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. And Linnell sometimes seems to forget that we're taping for our show, and that when you tape, like, peel back the curtain, when you tape things, you don't necessarily want the audience to know that it's taped. Sometimes you can't prevent or you can't help it and things happen. But you're not going to, like, give a timestamp and be like, oh, yeah, we'll see what happens leading up to 4 o'clock for an interview that airs at 5:30, or 6. And yet here was Linnell today when we taped Overreaction Tuesday.
I've never seen a team that likes each other so much, but then doesn't play hard all the time. So it's very interesting. I'll be curious to see if they make any other moves before 4 o'clock. We have some expiring deals on the offensive side of the ball, too, with Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson. So it should be a move-making Tuesday here before 4 o'clock.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the overreactions, the takes from the game. I'm going to edit this part out. Remember, this will air after 4 o'clock, you doofus.
Oh, it just sent 6:46.
There's an epic facepalm at the end of this. It's so good that you can hear it. For the YouTube audience that is now seeing Anthony and I live again, Anthony didn't play the clip on the radio. So when I get back in studio tomorrow and we wipe the fine board clean and start over, that's a 10-point fine for Anthony.
That is fair.
So I want now, in a way, this is a bonus, though, because I now get to see your reaction, and so does everybody, when you hear Linnell's facepalm at the end of this.
I've never seen a team that likes each other so much, but then doesn't play hard all the time. So it's very interesting. I'll be curious to see if they make any other moves before 4 o'clock. We have some expiring deals on the offensive side of the ball, too, with Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson. So it should be a move-making Tuesday here before 4 o'clock.
Yep. All right, let's get to the overreactions, the takes from the game. I'm going to edit this part out. Remember, this will air after 4 o'clock, you doofus.
Oh. Yo. So I'm taking the second one was one of those.
Sure was.
Gracious.
Sure super duper was.
I feel you, Linnell. I probably would have done the same thing.
You hate to see it. All right. So that was earlier today. Let's see. What else do we got? Anthony, what's your favorite? We probably only have time for one. Do we have time for two?
We got time for if they're quick. We can do
they are quick
first.
All right. Norman Powell. So is this reaction from the Kawhi Philly game winner? Like telling an old story? Okay.
Yes.
What's this from?
This is from his podcast.
Because everyone has a podcast now.
Yes.
All right. Norman Powell on Kawhi Leonard's game winner over Philly a couple years ago in the playoffs.
Can you walk us through that shot? I went back. I'm like, where were you at? And you were right behind
I was right
him.
there. Oh, yeah, I'm right there. Kawhi just wanted the ball, honestly. It was like a scheme, but, like, they took it away. So if you see, like, Kawhi had to pop to go get it, and now he's, like, just hunting for the shot where he can get space. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm looking at the clock like, bro, I don't know if we have enough time. And he running around the whole damn perimeter. I'm like, bro, when is this man going to shoot the ball? He found his little spot in the corner fading away, and, like, we were all on the edge of our seats like, that thing went in, and we were going crazy. It's supposed to go front rim and back. That thing goes straight up in the air and bounce. Come on, man, go in. Like
that's that long finger, like giving enough rotation.
Yeah, he was drinking Gatorade. You just see him like yelling and screaming. He had a blue tongue. I ain't never seen Kawhi like this before in my life.
That's funny. That sounds like it's also from Paul George's podcast.
It was.
Anthony.
You're really good. I forgot to include the source.
We can't be doing that. You got to give credit where it's due, bro.
You're right.
What are you doing over there? Last but not least, Giannis broke out the Hulk costume in the Bucks post-game press conference last night.
What we got? Don't be scared to come on.
Oh, that's funny.
Good old Giannis.
One of a kind, Giannis. All right, plenty of stuff from today. Plenty still to talk about tomorrow. We will see you